All right, we're learning something today called logarithms. And we'll call this you probably had this in Algebra 2. Not probably, you definitely had it. Did I spell it right? Logarithms. Now what in the world is a logarithm anyway? All right, my Algebra 2 class, honors Algebra 2 class, I was teaching. We were doing a review for the test, right? So we've been, learning logarithms for 2, maybe close to 3 weeks, something like that. Kid says, Mr. Hamrick, what's a logarithm anyway? I was like, oh my goodness. So a logarithm is basically just an exponent, is all it is. It's another way to write an exponent, right? It's just a fancy way to do things, because sometimes when you have exponents, there's not enough rules, there's not enough ways to solve things when you only have the rules for exponents. So there's a long history on it, I don't know exactly where it came from, I did look it up at one point, but they came up with these things called logarithms, and they applied some rules to it. And so now with logarithms, there's some problems that you would not be able to solve otherwise unless you came up with these logarithms. And basically it's just another way to write an exponent is really all it is. So for instance, I'm going to do this. Base to the, to the power, let's do that, equals x. We have 2 forms, okay? This is the first form right here. Okay, this is called exponential form. This is a form that we've seen before. It's no big deal. Exponential form. All right? Make sure I'm plugged into the right thing. Yeah. All right, so that's an exponential form right here. B. Now, I wrote B for a reason. Now, I know you guys aren't really using your books. You're just using the notes and the worksheets and stuff. But in the book, they use a to the y equals x. But I like to write it like this because these actually stand for something. In fact, I don't even want to write this as x. Let's write this as n. I was just kind of looking at the book and doing a combination of the 2 things. But B, what do you think B is? Look, it's a big number. It doesn't stand for big, okay? But you've got this little one on top and this big one here on the bottom. Guys, pay attention. Look up here. You're not going to take notes? Yeah, it's a good idea. It's logarithms. Do you know anything about logarithms at all? Okay, so it might be a good idea to write this stuff down, don't you? Okay. So the B right here is, what do you think it stands for? It's a base, right? Okay, you've seen that before. We've actually talked about that before, haven't we? What do you think this P stands for? It's a power, right. Now we could have put an E, I guess, for exponent, but I chose to put P for power. All right. Now, the N, I used the N to represent something, and that would be just the number. All right, so exponential form is this. The number is equal to the base to a power. That's all it is. Pretty simple. All right. So that's what the number is equal to. I like to use these letters because they make sense. They actually stand for something, okay? Now, what we're going to do is change this. Now, you say, well, where does logarithms come in? Well, exponential form is this thing right here. Then we're going to change this to a thing called logarithmic form. Now, this is very important. You're going to be doing this quite a bit. Changing it from, I might give you even some problems where all it says is change this from exponential form to logarithmic form. And then I'm going to have you do it the other way. I'm going to say, okay, go from logarithmic form to exponential form. That's what we'll do at first. Then eventually, you're going to have to be able to go from one form to the other to actually solve for x and solve for a variable. All right. So first of all we're going to do is just change from one form to the other. So let's show you what logarithmic form is. Let's write it down first. Logarithmic. All right, so you've got exponential form, and this one is logarithmic form. Again, all it is, when you wonder what what a logarithm is, it's just another way to write an exponent. That's all it is. You understand what I'm saying? It looks weird, okay? It's a little different than what you've seen before, but it's just another way to write an exponent. It really means the same thing as this thing right here. A base to a power equals a number. That's what a logarithmic form is. It's just a different way to write it. And when we first look at it, you're like, well, why in the world do you even need to know that? Because what I said earlier, there are times when there are rules for logarithms that that you can use and that you wouldn't be able to do for an exponent. For instance, I'll ask you to solve for something. You're like, well, I don't know how to solve for that. There's no way. We've done a little bit of that already, right? When you put the bases equal to each other, when the bases are the same, you set the exponents equal. Or when you set when the exponents are the same, you set the bases equal. Well, what if you didn't have that situation? And what if you didn't have enough information in exponential form? That's why they came up with this logarithmic form, because it gives you more rules and more ability to do some things with this. So let's do this. What I like to do is this. I like to start with the word log first. So we start with the word log, and then we put a base in there. What is our base in this situation? It's b. All right, so watch what I do. I make this little. All right, it's not as big as the rest of the letters, and I put it underneath. That represents a base, okay? It's like you've heard of superscript and subscript. You ever hear of that? Like a superscript is kind of like an exponent, right? It's small and it's up top, but a subscript would be small and it's down below a little bit, all right? This means log base b of the number, all right? So what do we use for the number? N equals the power. So really, if we wanted to get p by itself, if I wanted to solve for p, this is another way to write it, is really what it is, equals p. All right, so base to a power equals a number. We write it like this in logarithmic form. Log base b of the number, all right, notice, we go b to the other side. You see it? You don't go log base b of p, because then it would look too close to this. We go log base b of n, the number, equals the power. And that's how you change from one form to the other. Does that make any sense at all? Now, it may not make sense as far as understanding what logarithms really are. It takes a while. It's not like I can teach you one lesson and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I know all about logarithms now. It doesn't work that way. It's a slow process. The more you do, the more it starts slowly making sense. So just because you don't understand it completely right now doesn't mean that you're not going to understand a little bit more as we move on. All right. So what if I had something like this? What if I had 2 to the third equals 8? Now we all understand that's true, don't you? 2 cubed is equal to 8. That's in what form right there? Of these two, what form is that in? Exponential. It's pretty easy, right? If it doesn't say log, then it's in exponential form. What I want to do is change this from exponential form and change it to logarithmic form. So what do? First of all, I like to write the word log first. And then we always go log base, all right? Log base whatever. Now what is the base of this thing over here? Justin, what is it? What's the base of this? Look, what's the base of your power? Well, move up.
1.
It's 2. Right, that's the base right there. Okay, just like we wrote the base here. So the base is 2, and so that's what we write right here. We write log base 2 of what? Of the number, which is, good, it's 8. And that equals the power, which is 3. All right, so there you go. If you wanted to, you could actually put this into your calculator. We're not going to get into that right now. Okay, I'll show you. There's a little trick. You can't put this in directly. You got to do something else. But it's going to be a little bit before we actually put that in a calculator. I don't really care to solve for x and all that kind of stuff right now. All I want you to be able to do for right now is just to change it from one form to the other. That's really all I want you to do. Does that make any sense at all? All right, so there's exponential form. Change it to logarithmic form. What if you had this? What if you had log? Now, again, you may look at this and say, well, you know, how can you have a base 1/2, and what does that mean to have a base of a log? Again, after we get going with this, hopefully you'll understand what this means a little bit later. So here we go. This is what we're starting with, and I want to change this to the other form. Well, it's pretty obvious, right? What form is this in right now, the way it's sitting? Logarithmic, right, because you see the word log right there. Not too hard to see, is it? All right, so this is in logarithmic form. I want to change this to exponential form. So look what we did. Here's the exponential form. Here's logarithmic form. So let's do this. Let's start with the base first. Base, right? We go base to the power equals the number. What's our base in this logarithmic form right here? Emily, what's the base of this? 1/2. Very good. Okay. Now, what's it say? Base to the power. What's my power over here? It's -4, right? Okay, so it's in logarithm form. This is actually your power. So it's 1/2, I'm going to put it in parentheses, to the -4th, equals the number. Look over here. Where does the number go? Okay, actually right here. It goes on the end right here. And where is the number? It's this thing right there, equals 16. you see how they match up? This is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this form, and I'm looking at this form right here. And wherever a b is, actually, let's go this way. Wherever the b is right here, where do you put it? You put it here. Wherever the n is here, in this situation, it would be 16. Where do you put that? You put it over here by itself after the equal sign. Okay, look at this. Equals -4. What is that? That's the p. Wherever the p is in logarithmic form, where do you put it? You put it up here as a power. Okay? Don't you see now why I use b and p, base and power? Because it makes sense. If you use like a and x and y, then you can't, it's too hard to see. I like to use b for base, p for power, n for number. It just, what's that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I do it, because then you don't have, which one is the a, and which one is the x, and which one is the y? It's easy. You know which one the base is. B is the base. P is the power. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's what we've done. We've changed it from logarithmic form to exponential form.